some music. I don't know. We'll see. All my friends are musicians, so
Yeah, you're still doing drums?
yeah, man. Gonna go on like a week tour Wednesday.
Heck yeah, that's what it's all about, hitting the road.
Yeah, it's cool. So, yeah. So you guys got a podcast, and you're running into some time issues, huh?
Gosh, man, just way too much time on the, yes, way too much time, Aaron.
Cool.
And of course, you're the man, and are you standing?
Yeah, yeah. Standing
Oh,
standing desk. So I'm sitting down all day long, right? And my back's killing me, and I'm like, man, screw this.
you got one of those desks that you can lift and lower?
No, I got a regular, just like regular IKEA table, and then I bought a coffee table from Craigslist, another like just little plain IKEA coffee table, and I was looking at it and I was like, I bet if I put these two things on top of each other, they'll make like the right height for me. So, got my laptop on a little stand right here in front of me.
Yeah, that's
It's
a
a
great
cute little
idea.
keyboard.
Man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Hopefully one of these days I can get a treadmill that I can just walk on, so you see me doing this all day
Yeah,
long.
there you go.
Yeah. So I downloaded and checked out Audition, and
Okay.
it looks fairly similar to Logic, which is what I use. Um, but the good news is that you can create and save templates for both your effects. I guess I use something called an effects rack.
Okay.
So you drop in some effects, you tweak them out, and then you save it as like a kind of like a track setting, I guess.
Okay.
So like each track will have their own set of effects on it. You can save that, use it anytime. The way I do it for all the shows that I edit, I create all the tracks I need. So that's like hosts, maybe one or two for a guest or something. Uh, like an intro. Do you guys do intros and outros, like pre-recorded or anything like that?
We
Or
have
usually,
a okay, Aaron. So we've got two guys talking in the studio,
hmm
and we do, um, and then we're going to put in some music that comes in. We do some sound effects. We have a commercial or two that come in for a sponsor.
The
So
only thing that's pre-recorded is the commercial. Besides that, we have a different intro every time.
okay,
but we also do pre-recorded music.
yeah.
Right.
Right. So the template you'd want to make is create all the tracks you think you'll need, add the effects, which I'll explain in a minute, and then drop in the pre-recorded commercial and the music, and then you save that as a template. So every week you can just open it up and hit record, and you'll have the files in there. You'll have all the settings, like all the effects plugins already set up, and
Yeah.
you'll probably still have to tweak them, like I do, because things change from week to week unless you guys just have like the gain knobs locked down and there's no variables. Most likely for your guests, because the people you interview, I'm sure that's always going to be changing as far as like how it sounds. So
Yes,
that's
and we're doing that through recording a speaker phone. We put the zoom up to it, and yes,
that's I was thinking about that. So are you guys calling them like with your cell phone,
no,
or is it just a landline?
we have a landline,
Okay.
and it's like a conference phone, big buttons, call it, and then we get them on the phone, and we just turn on the speaker, and then that comes out, and I put the Zoom audio recorder right up next to the speaker.
Well, what I bet you guys could do you think is there like a headphone jack in that in the phone? Like a place for a headset or like just a headphone, some kind of quarter-inch line in or eighth inch it would be.
Yeah, probably. I can look.
I bet you could get a little auxiliary cable that's just like the double-sided eighth inch cables and run one from the phone out to the Zoom and
Yes,
then because your Zoom should have an input
yes, it does. You're right.
and then I bet you could run the audio output from the Zoom out to one of your computers and into Skype or something like that. Or is there a mixer close by?
Well, we have that. We run all of the. We run into a Personas 4 input, whatever audio device.
Interface. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I bet there's a way to route. I, I bet you could even get a cable that would let you route it straight from that phone into the audio interface, and then just use software monitoring to hear, what's going on in the interface,
And then how would we talk to the people, to the person?
Well, so yeah, because they're on the phone, right? So normally you guys just been using the speakerphone to talk.
Yeah, because there's two of us.
You could set up a. You
We
could.
do have a second phone. I mean, he could pick that phone up, and I could be on the other phone.
Can you link them like that? My thinking is, well, I was just trying to figure out the way to do it with the interfaces. The guest's audio comes in through the interface, and then ideally there would be a way to route both of your voices uh, through some kind of software out back into the phone,
Yeah, so we would talk into our microphones.
and they would hear it
Yeah,
over the phone, as well as it would be recording what's going on from the phone, and your tracks, obviously. So
yeah.
that's a little bit tricky, but I believe it can be done.
Okay. All right. Well,
So I was thinking about that earlier.
And now,
Yeah. Otherwise, you're.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, otherwise you're always gonna be stuck doing record the speakerphone with Zoom, which is always gonna sound pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Not really a way to improve that.
I mean, if you can help me knock down the solution, please, Aaron. That I would. Yes, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause the best that I've found right now, where I'm at right now,
Mhm.
is I thought I found a. I don't know what the name for a telephone jack is, but it goes telephone jack to XLR, and then I
Right.
run the XLR into the interface. But I don't know how to. We would still be talking into a speakerphone.
Right. You couldn't. So getting the audio from. Uh, Basically, you have to set up an output from whatever software you're using.
Yeah.
A line output that goes from the back. There's outputs on the interface that goes from that. Probably from it's going to be a 1/4-inch cable into probably an 1/8-inch cable.
Okay.
So I'd have to see your phone, but I believe that's how that would work.
So I'm looking at. I would be wanting to ask Google something about outputting from an interface into a telephone. That's kind
Right.
of
Right.
the
Well, yeah.
question.
Basically, yeah. Basically, we need to figure out what kind of phone you have, and then how you plug something into that. Because
Okay.
I bet if you can get audio out of it, you can put audio back into it. But maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a tricky solution, and I would definitely be down to help you try to sit down with you in the next. Well, probably not in the next couple of days. Maybe when I get back from tour,
Yeah.
we can
Sure.
sit down and figure that out, because I'd like to write a blog post about that, because
Yeah.
people ask me that question all the time. They're like, how do I record phone calls? But they don't have as complicated of a setup as you guys do. But
Right.
that's a cool problem to solve.
Okay. Well, great. So yeah, to be continued.
So we'll just do that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's go over some stuff with Audition. Well, you're in front of your computer right now. Do you have it open right now?
I'll pull it up right now. Audition. Okay, it's coming up.
All right, and let me see if I can share my screen so you can see what I can see.
Okay.
Dun dun. How do I share this? Is there a little button around here that I'm supposed to click?
It's gonna be on the left side. It's gonna be a green button that says Screen Share. And then
Nice.
click on that, and then it'll tell you can go applications or whatever.
Oh, nice. Well, that's pretty rad. All right. Oh, come on. System preferences. I don't need no privacy.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, Google Talk plugin, Google Software. What am I supposed to let control this? I'm so confused. All right, let's just click everything Google. Let Google take over my computer. All right, can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right, so basically I just opened a new template or a new project inside of Adobe Audition, and then I selected up here this workspace, and I think you can actually create and save workspaces. So I would do that, and all that means is basically you have all these different tabs and stuff, and I guess you can move them around and like make them go different places, and so if you wanted to configure that, otherwise this looks like a pretty fine workflow, except maybe all this stuff is taking up too much space. I'd actually want this guy to be bigger, but that's here or there. And I uploaded a audio file just so I'd have something to work with.
All right.
So I dropped in my file, and you guys would probably be recording, and hopefully you know that workflow a little bit better than I do. But I found this effects rack, and this is where you can add all the plugins that are similar to what I use in Logic. So the order, and I wrote this out, so I'll send it over to you. The order I usually drop plugins is first an equalizer, which is to kind of adjust the overall sound. Like if there's too much highs, and I'll show you. I'll actually pop this guy open, and this is what a visual representation of an equalizer looks like. I guess basically, if you're familiar with the frequency range at all, do you guys work with this kind of audio stuff?
Yeah. Yes.
So you got low end on the left, mid range in the middle, and high end on the right, and that the bar that goes straight through the middle is volume.
Okay.
So underneath the bar would be cutting, over the bar would be boosting. So like if I grab this middle band right here, and I pulled it down, it would be cutting out this much of this right around 800 hertz, which is kind of mid range.
Okay.
So and if I pull it up like this, it boosts that much. So if I wanted to cut a bunch of the highs, I'd go over here to the highs and I'd pull it down, maybe adjust this Q right here, which is the width. Oops. So you can see as I pull up, it only takes out a little bit. As I pull down on this Q/width, it takes more out.
Scott, I'm not seeing the EQ. Are you?
Oh no, you guys aren't seeing this one?
We're seeing the EQ, but there's a delay in it, so it's not changing real time.
Well, can you see it though? All I see is the audio wave.
Correct. That's what I'm seeing right now.
But Aaron, I believe you have the EQ brought up. Do you?
Yeah, I do, but it may not be allowing you guys to see it. Let me see if I can configure the Hangouts. Screen share. All right, let's try this again. Let's just go. Can we just go full desktop? Whoa, no, that was a bad idea.
Uh-oh.
What was that?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, here we go. All right, can you guys see the?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Now we're in business.
Did I lose everyone?
No, we're here.
Okay. All right. Okay, so as I was saying, left side is bass frequencies. The middle, and right now I'm talking about horizontal. So horizontally, bass on the left, middle, mid-range, and then the right is the highs. 20,000 hertz, which is the top end of what humans can hear, and then 0 down here, which is at the bottom. So this line straight across the middle is the volume. So if you wanted to boost or cut, you could grab one of these guys. This would be no boost, no cut. If I pull it up, it'll boost this much. If I pull it down of this kind of high end range right here, if I pull it down, it'll cut that much.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Cool. Okay.
is there a specific range that you're looking for the whole time, or do you just want a consistent hertz across the board?
Ideally, the best recordings are kind of balanced. Usually, let me switch over to Logic real fast, where I've got a track loaded up here, and I'll have to reset my screen share, and I'll kind of show you how that all works. Show me Logic. Huh. Does it not let me? That's strange. Okay. All right, can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Okay, so this is Logic, and it's pretty similar. I will pull up my mixer and then my channel EQ. So right now I've got a lot of. Can you guys see this window as well? The EQ.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So right now I've got all the bass frequencies below about 50 cut out, and that just helps clean up the mix because a lot of those low frequencies can't really hear, and they just kind of make everything sound a little bit muddier. So this curve right here is what's called a high pass filter, and that you basically can just move it forward and kind of adjust the slope, but it rolls off all this grayed out area. And this is similar to the same one here. It's doing the same thing.
Okay.
So it's letting through everything that's kind of underneath this blue bar, which is a bunch of sound. But here, let me play this. I wonder if I play audio, can you guys hear it?
We should be if it's through that program.
Let's see, I've got to output. Anything?
No, we're not picking it up.
Okay, let me see. I got some audio here. Output, system setting. Let's try this, hang on. Anything there?
No.
Okay, well,
Okay, I'm just trying to follow along. Right now we're looking at the full audio track, and with the EQ you're selecting all of the highs and all of the lows, and you're automatically taking them out of the mix, correct?
This is so not exactly. I don't think, if I'm understanding you. What this is doing right now is, so the way an EQ works is that you have what's called bands, which is each one of these little numbers right here. It gives you a point of control to where you can either pull down and cut some frequencies out. And I'm sorry about the noise in the background. I have an English bulldog who's destroying this massive bone I got him the other day. Rupert, can you do that somewhere else? Hang on a second, guys. I'm sorry about that. He's okay. So what's going on right here is this equalizer is actually reducing the volume of this frequency right here. So it's cutting out right in the mid range there. So say you have like an S sound. S's usually stick either 5,000, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 Ks. So I'll switch over because this will give me an idea. I'm going to play back. This shows you the actual sound waves.
Okay.
So what I have right here is I have a certain area cut, which will reduce the volume of that frequency.
Okay.
And if I wanted to cut kind of all the mid-range right here, you see, and this is fine because you usually want a little bit more bass in your track. A little bit more bass, and then a little less mid-range, and a little less highs, and you'll kind of hear that in most really good audio. Yeah, but you do try to find a nice balance.
Aaron, one more time? What's the mix you like? Bass, and then a mid, and then less on the high.
Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit more bass. Really, it's kind of, you do you do try to find a relatively even balance, and
Okay.
that's one of those things you can trust your ears on.
Yeah.
Um, once you listen to tracks for a while and you listen to it and you think, okay, like, is there too much bass or is there not enough bass? When there's too much bass, you'll hear it'll be very boomy and kind of uncomfortable to listen to. And
Yeah.
and in the same way, if there's too much highs. So your ears can be good here, but the cool thing about the visualizer is that, and I'm not sure if I know there's probably a plugin you can download. I don't know if the stock download in Audition will show you kind of what you see here as far as all these little lines.
Okay.
So say I wanted to cut off all this 200 frequency right here. I can actually just pull it down like this.
Okay.
So it actually reduces all this.
Ah.
So this is kind of how you trim. Say you got a bunch of highs that you want to take out. You could grab this shelf EQ, which is just a gentle slope. This whole pink area that's highlighted, and you have something similar over here. It looks like this, and I believe you have to click it to turn it on. Let me see. So this kind of allows you to lower the whole overall instead of kind of just a single band like this one is.
Okay.
So this would be useful for cutting out just a very narrow range. Like say there's usually a spot right around 2250 that is very uncomfortable to listen to.
Okay.
And so you can actually cut out maybe 5 or 10 decibels in that range all the time.
Okay.
So the very basic setup that I start with is just a low pass filter right around 40 hertz, so it cuts off everything below 40, and then a little bit around 5K and a little bit more around 2200.
Okay.
And then not usually a high pass, but you could leave a high pass in that just kind of gently rolls off right at 1800. And then 10,000, right around 10,000 can sometimes be a problem for ladies or for crappier mics. Like if someone's using like a laptop microphone, a lot of the times you'll have a lot of 10K in there.
Yeah.
So, but this is kind of where I start.
Okay.
And so as I'm listening back to the track, I'm looking at the lines. Let me find a good spot. So I'm kind of looking at this and trying to see if anything's poking up further than anything else. And especially in this mid to high range, because you'll usually hear those between either 5,000, 10,000, it'll sound like and it'll be terrible. They've got a really good mic here. Let me see if I can find a recent where they didn't have a very good. Oh yeah, here we go. Don't save. All right. Okay. So you can see here, this one is a little bit less balanced.
Yeah.
A lot of peaks in here, and it's not super great dynamics. And she clipped quite a bit, which is kind of where this starts getting squared off. So you want to try to avoid that when you're recording. But people just send me tracks, and I try to do the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
But so what I ended up doing in that one is cutting out quite a bit of 2200,
Mm-hmm.
and then right around 5K and 10K, and then also a little bit more of the bass. So the idea with an EQ is that you have these different bands that you can kind of cut sections out, and some people will boost sections. But what I actually like to do is just cut the bad sounding frequencies out and then boost the overall track with the compressor right after it.
Okay.
because then what happens is that you kind of get it into shape by trying to get a good balance. You know, if there's too much lows, you cut a little bit of the lows. If there's too much highs, you cut a little bit of the highs, and then you can boost the overall track volume with a compressor. And compressors basically they're there to tame the peaks, the really loud sections. Usually when someone yells into a mic or just has, you know, if people don't have good mic technique, you'll get a lot of peaks and sometimes clipping if they're using too much gain.
Yeah.
Too much input, then they clip, or you know, just terrible audio tends to have that problem. But what you can do with a compressor is you set a threshold to where everything above it will start being reduced in volume. It brings it back down, and so when you open up a compressor and you see threshold, that's what that is.
Okay.
So right here I've got tube model compressor. Let me switch this. Let me pull up just a regular compressor.
Aaron, please, while you're looking at this, right there, if you'll go to multiband.
Oh yeah, I use those too.
Well, I want to ask, this is one that I go to, and I'd like your input on it.
Sure.
And then under the preset, if you'll look at broadcast.
Sure.
And what does that look like, and what's going on?
Okay, so a multiband compressor is kind of a combination of an EQ and a compressor. A normal compressor just looks at volume, so it doesn't care about what the frequencies are. Like if it sees a volume come up close to hitting 0, like -6 or wherever you set the threshold, let's say -3, any volume that goes over -3 will get reduced by whatever the margin is, which is if it's 3 to 1, then for every 3 decibels it goes over that threshold, it'll actually only allow 1 decibel through.
Okay.
So the higher you set it, the more volume has to go over that limit, that threshold, before any volume will actually go through. The rest of it will just get reduced, kind of squished, and then you can kind of boost the overall volume of the track because any peaks are going to be cut down, if that makes sense, kind of reduced. So the way a multiband compressor works is that it actually splits the compressor. There's actually 4 compressors working here, and each one has its own little frequency range. So this one on the left is all the lows, and the one in the middle is kind of mid-lows between, looks like 120 and 1000, and then this is the mid-highs, and then this is the highs. So whereas a normal compressor, if there was a base frequency that was boosting up and it was crossing over into like -3, into the red zone, it would just squish it. In this case, it would squish the overall volume of the track. And with a multiband compressor, whenever something in the low frequency comes up above whatever you set the threshold to be, which in this case is pretty low, -18, whenever something in the base frequency comes up and pops over that, whenever you get a really loud transient,
yes,
it will reduce that band. It won't touch the rest of it. So this kind of gives you a little bit more fine control over like, okay, like if there's some transients just in the highs, then it'll just reduce the volume of the high band and it won't touch the rest of the track.
Okay, so when you come into compressors, you generally don't go to this. You go to, what do you call it, a single compressor?
A single band, yeah, a single band compressor, because this one just works with more just the overall volume, single band compressor, yeah. So it says, so in this case I would set it up and I'd say, okay, anything that goes over -3 decibels, which is kind of danger zone, you know, you want to try to stick between -6 and -3 for your master output, because zero is unity gain, and that's where stuff clips and starts sounding terrible. Okay. So in this case, I say anything that goes over -3, reduce it over a ratio of like don't let anything through unless it's like 5 decibels over, which in this case would actually be peaking pretty hardcore. So maybe I'll say like 3. And so if it starts hitting 0, it'll reduce it to where only 1 decibel comes through. So it actually only hit to like -2 instead of 0 where it would have been. And then I can go back and boost the output gain up by a decibel or 2, because anything on the top end is going to be clipped down. So it means the quieter parts can get louder without the louder parts getting louder as well.
Okay.
It's a tricky. It is kind of one of those things that's hard to wrap your head around until you play with it a little bit. But I'll show you what I mean in this one right here. So as I'm playing this back. So this is the gain reduction. Anytime something comes above -12, it gets reduced by, well, 1.5 to 1.
Okay.
And this is, I've actually changed my settings on this as I've been watching tutorials and videos and stuff. And for me, it's looking like, depending on how much compression you need to use, like if you have a track that has a lot of really, really loud parts and a lot of really, really quiet parts, you have to really compress it to get it all sounding even.
Okay.
But if you have a track that's kind of maybe just has a couple transients, but for the most part it was recorded with the right input gain, then you don't need to do a lot of compression. You usually set something up towards the top end of -3. And that way any peaks that go over -3 can be reduced by 2. It only allows 1 in for every 2 it goes over, and then you can just maybe use 1 decibel of makeup gain.
Okay.
And that's usually pretty good for most well-recorded tracks. For some of the guests you're going to interview, a lot of times you'll have to go lower and to kind of reduce the louder parts by a little bit, boost it up a couple decibels to bring the quieter parts up.
And Aaron, when you're adjusting your threshold, do you automatically adjust your ratio as well, or just when you move one, it moves the other?
No, threshold is just where the compressor starts kicking in. So
Okay.
the threshold is basically at what volume level is this thing going to start working.
Okay.
So in this case, it would be -8 decibels.
Okay.
And it would, at that point, for every 3 decibels that go over -8 above it, for every 3 that go above it, only 1 is going to actually be added, or one is going to be let through.
Okay, thank you. And so we're here when there is a very great variable between high and low. Generally, we're going to push the threshold down.
Yeah.
And then when that goes down, what do you recommend on the ratio?
On the ratio, so my thought, I use the compressor, and there's kind of 2 different stock settings that I use, and one is kind of a gentle tamer. So like if most of the audio is sitting between -12 and like -16, but every once in a while they go louder than that, then I set it down there and I set the ratio to like 1.5 to 1 or like 2 to 1, so that it just kind of tames it as it gets higher up.
Right.
So that's what I believe people call a gentle compressor. So it's kind of soft. There's not doing a ton of compression, but it's just kind of, as it gets higher up, it just reduces it and makes it be less volume. And then you can boost a couple of decibels in gain if you that's one of those things you play back and you listen to it.
Aaron, please.
Yes.
Okay, great. I understand the ratio. So when you're at a gentle tamer, 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1,
yeah.
What do you generally recommend for your threshold on that?
So that would be for something I'd normally do -12 to maybe -20.
Okay.
So and that's just something I go and I adjust and I listen to and I hear how it affects each track.
And then, Aaron, so when you do that, let's say you're listening to an hour-long show,
Hmm.
and it's overall good, and you got your ratio, and now you're thinking, I'm going to be somewhere between -12 and 20. At what point are you going to listen that's going to tell you, okay, you know what, I really like -15? And how many different times will you change that?
I generally try to look at the kind of the wavelength of the overall file when trying to determine that. So, like in this situation, let me see. So in this situation, I've noticed that for the most part, this wavelength is she has a lot of gain, and most of the time it's too much gain. There's a couple of parts here where, and this is, since this is strictly visual and I don't have a graph on the side to show you. Well, I can play back and show you what it looks like here. So she's pretty consistently between -15 and -9, which I wish I could zoom in. So she's pretty much in the green right here most of the time. So that lets me know. So that kind of let me know that I needed to do a more of a gentle compression. So I set it at -13. I boosted the output gain by about 3 decibels, and I set a ratio. I don't know if was I adjusting this a minute ago. I feel like I might have been.
Yes, you've gone between 1.5 up to 3.
Okay, yeah. So in this situation, I was probably doing something kind of in between a gentle compressor and a harder one, which is the higher up. So for the gentle compressor, we set it kind of lower, and we set the ratio lower. For a harder compressor, which means like, hey, don't let anything above -4, because I'm going to set the ratio to like 5-to-1 or 6-to-1. Just stop everything above -4. So that's the harder setting, and then you don't usually have to boost too much because it's really only going to clip the very top of the peaks in the audio.
Okay.
So, and a lot of the times sometimes I'll use both of those, depending on how many transients, how many peaks and clipping, how much clipping there is going on.
Okay.
And again, kind of the variance and range between like what does most of this track sound like, and another trick that I do sometimes, if like somebody, say I'm recording and I'm talking like this, and then you have a guest that sits back and talks like this for a couple of minutes.
Yes.
Where you just can't hear them. A lot of times what I'll actually do if it's bad enough is I will duplicate the track. So I'll duplicate the track settings, and then I'll go through here, and I'll cut out a section of I'll cut out that section of the track, and then just move it over to a different track.
Right.
And then adjust the settings on that. So like boost the gain a bunch with the compressor or an EQ, and then change the settings to kind of get it to sound more like the other track. It's not a great solution, but it's better. It's usually better than trying to like really over compress the crap out of a track to get everything sounding like the same volume.
So when you need input gain, you do it through the compressor. You don't jump the track all the way up to the highest.
Yeah. Normally I control volume with either a multi-band compressor or a compressor.
Okay.
So the way I try to do it is that at first I cut out any frequencies that I notice are peaking, and usually a lot of the peaks come from the mid-range or the sibilances, which are the S's and the C's and stuff like that. That's up here on the high end. So I'll use the EQ and do a little bit of taming with that. So I'll pull down a band. I'll make it a little bit narrow. It's like, okay, I'm reducing that area by about 5 decibels right here. So a lot of times that can solve a lot of the peaking if you isolate what the frequency is, and then cut a little bit of it with the EQ.
Yes, I got that, and that makes sense. Aaron, when you are kind of setting this, you say, okay, this is where I'm going to cut.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if it's an hour-long show, how many times do you go in and examine the EQ throughout the whole piece?
A lot of the times I'll spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes dialing in a track. So like I'll find a section where someone talks for a while.
Right?
So like I'll just set it right here, and I'm sure you have a looping option in Audition, but I'll just loop a whole section of it, and I'll just listen back to it and kind of try to dial it in, because over the course, usually when people are recording, the dynamics don't change that much.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like I mentioned, sometimes I know people will back away from a mic, or they'll kind of sit back or lean forward, and stuff will change. But usually, for the most part, I'll go through a lot of times as I'm going through the show. I'm listening and I'm trying to think like, okay, like have I done enough compression on this track? Like how does the track sound? Like should I cut some more of the highs out? Did I cut too much of the highs out? Like is the audio still clear? Is there too much bass? Like is this person's volume as loud as the other person's volume? And I'm kind of doing all that as I'm listening back through the show, and doing the edits or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of it's almost a never-ending thing. Usually for the good thing about you guys is that you'll be able to get your own settings dialed in pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say that you'll probably spend 20, 30, 45 minutes on each of your tracks to just kind of adjust it to the voice. And honestly, like I've been doing this for 10, 15, 20, 30 hours a week for the past 2 years, and like I'm still tweaking all the time. Like I'm finding new and different ways to do things, and I'm listening back and I'm like, oh, I should change this. So I think it's one of those things, kind of like sports, that like you can do something, like you can shoot a basketball, but you're always kind of looking at it and trying to be like, okay, is there a better way to do this? Can I do this better next time? So, and this is kind of where the templates help, because once you have a template for your track set up, and like, okay, I can just drop this template of plugins on my track, or the effects, I guess they're called. I can drop all these effects. They're kind of pre-set up. I've got a good starting point every week, and then maybe I'll just make a few fine-tuning adjustments.
Yeah.
And you get you in the same ballpark every week.
Aaron,
yeah.
Oh, okay. And like I was saying, our workflow now is I'll record in Audition, and then I take it out and put it in Premiere to edit. What is your thought on that? Is that kind of don't do that?
Well, what does Premiere do for you that Audition doesn't?
Well, I just don't know Audition very well, and I use Premiere often for video editing.
Gotcha.
So that's the only reason. And but I mean, it makes sense that Audition would be more efficient because it's specifically built for audio editing.
Right. Well, I'm wondering about multi-track editing, because like you mentioned, like you just said, you record in here, so I'm guessing you would be doing your effects and stuff in here. So the problem would be is that like once you bounce something out, once you apply the effects to it, then you can't really go back and change that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where you might look and see if like, and look at this. This is nice. So I would try to stick it with the same program. Can you do like effects and stuff inside of Premiere? Does it have the same effects rack kind of thing?
I'll have to do some research and figure that out. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I would say if you could stick to the same program for adding the effects and doing the editing, because that solves the problem you were saying of how many times you go back through and listen. Like for the shows that most of the shows, I'm listening to the whole thing and kind of trimming them up and cutting out mistakes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm listening to them from start to finish. So that gives me a really good idea by the time I'm done of what the overall mix sounds like. and whether or
And
not I've got everything kind of balanced.
on an hour-long show, let's say two two co-hosts
Hmm.
and four call-in interviewers, phone-in
Hmm.
callers.
Yeah.
What would you, for you, what would the time that you would spend on that project to edit?
Something like how long is the raw audio?
Well, let's see. The raw audio, the interviews are usually about 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And we try and chop them down to, I mean, maybe they're a
The
little bit
interviews
longer.
are usually about 30 to 45,
No,
and the
they're
raw
not.
audio is about an hour to an hour and a half.
No, it's not. The audio is about 45 minutes,
Hmm.
and the interviews are combined total. Yeah, there's four of them, and they're probably about 20 minutes at the most each. So
So
we
prob-
we did
so after you do some editing on the interviews.
correct. The
So like,
interviews are crippling us. That's our weak point right now, Aaron. We got to figure out how to move those faster because I'm just wasting time chopping those.
yeah, yeah, and honestly, the biggest thing for me has been keyboard shortcuts.
Okay.
So I'm fairly certain. Let me go grab another file and import it here. But I'm fairly certain you can have a similar situation. How do I add tracks inside of
You're going to go over to multi-track up in the top left,
here we go. Got to create a
and
new session.
yes,
I would say here you go. Here's a template that you would create at some point. Sample bit depth. I really only need 24. Master stereo or mono. Usually mono. Cool. So now I can drop a track in here. Okay, I don't need it to match the sample rate. I just need.
what is going on with the sample rate, Aaron?
Um,
Because I have sometimes it's 44.1 and then sometimes it's 48.
yeah, that's just a thing different programs record in,
Okay.
and that's just how many bits. I
Okay.
think it matters for people who make CDs, but for the most part, in this, it's not something I ever worry about. I just kind of go with whatever the program wants to do.
Okay. Okay. Cool. That's kind of what I do too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like there is some difference how much it actually matters. I don't think much.
Okay.
Okay, now that I've got this over here. So converting. Wow, this is slow. How do you make this go faster?
Just wait.
You just wait. Yeah. So it looks like. So I've got a couple tracks here, and this is pretty similar to how Logic works.
Okay.
Obviously, I've kind of got this full screen. I try to give myself as much space to do the visual editing as possible. But there's marquee tools, which I believe this guy has too, where you can hold down Command. Well, no. Where are the tools? Clip tools, grab
right
tools,
there.
time selection tool. Okay, so B for blade tool, R no.
Or V for Victor, if you want to
V.
move it.
Okay, moving. Let's see, moving razor, which is clipping, slipping. No, time selection. This is the one I might use, except it grabs everything, and I don't want it to grab everything. What I want is the marquee selection tool, but for some reason, have you ever used this marquee selection tool?
I haven't.
Interesting. So what marquee selection does in Logic, this is my favorite thing. When I hold down Command, it gives me an alternative tool, which is marquee, and I can just click and drag over as many tracks or just one if I want to, and then I can highlight the waveform and hit delete, and then it'll cut that section out, and I can grab the rest of it. There's a keyboard shortcut to select everything in front of it.
Okay.
Shift F, and then I can just like move stuff back. So that's the easy way I go through and I cut out anything that doesn't need to be there.
That's
And
cool.
I'm sure that there's probably a similar keyboard shortcut or two,
So
but
you're
that's
you're you're saying that's a shortcut to move to select everything behind the current point?
or in front of rather.
Okay.
So that's let's see.
I
Select
could, yeah, I'll Google that.
all clips and track, clips to start a session, clips to end a session. Yeah, so this you can assign these things. You can assign a keyboard shortcut to clips to end a session, something like Shift F.
Okay.
So it would grab everything after the point you were at. It would select it so you could then
Okay.
move it. So stuff like that's really cool to know. And
That
yeah,
is,
so
Aaron, yes, because what you'll get it so in tight, and then you'll get it moved out, and then I was like, crap, I got to zoom all the way back out,
oh
select
yeah,
everything, zoom in, and move it. So, dude, you
terrible.
just saved me a lot of time. Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I'll give you I'll give you a quick run through because I know you asked earlier of how I do these. So at this point, we'll just pretend like I just dropped all the files I need in here. I kind of dropped them in there and I arranged the beginning. It's like I say, so I got my intro here, I got all this stuff, and now I've got some files. I generally start off with a template, so I have a bunch of plugins already set up, and then I have some stuff on my master as well, which will turn into the output. So this is all this stuff on the right side over here is the output. So, but then I get in here and I start all the files where they're supposed to be, and maybe I'll do one that I haven't chopped up quite so bad. Let's see. The news was good. I didn't cut this one up too much. So I've got some files. Like I usually start by getting them all lined up where they're supposed to go. So do you guys hit record at the same time and it records both of your tracks?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So you don't ever have to worry about like people sending you tracks that start at different points.
No.
Because that's a pain in the butt. But so I'll get the very first thing I do is usually I try to get all the tracks lined up. So it's like, okay, he starts talking there and here, she starts talking over here. Like for you would kind of zoom out and you'll drop in your, like say this is your interview track and you know that you've got a spot in the middle where that goes. Then
Okay.
you kind of drop it in, and so you get everything generally lined up. You're not too worried about the specifics. But you got the track at the beginning, you've got an outro track at the end. Like okay, that's all ish in there somewhere. So then I go through and I start listening back. And I start playback, and that is where I start doing my effects adjustments. So I'm listening for volume, I'm listening for overall EQ, I'm listening to see like, oh hey, did I screw something up right here? Do I need to cut that out? If so, I go through and I cut it. I hit the keyboard shortcut to grab everything in front of it, and I drag it back, and there's a setting to create an automatic crossfade in Logic, just so everything flows smoothly and you don't have to do an actual crossfade.
That's awesome.
I bet you there is a similar option for this guy.
Yep, I'll Google that. Aaron, when you're listening through, and what is your ideal volume output that you're looking for?
Sure. So I try to get everything in the master track to play back right between -6 and -3.
Okay.
In
Right.
most,
Okay. You said that. All right.
yeah, in most DAWs, that's kind of that's where it starts going from yellow to red. Let me see if I can play this back. See, that's
Yep.
that's been overcompressed and limited, peak limited, so it's super loud.
Okay.
What happened? So, and that's where compressors right up here on the top end of like -3, they come in handy because you can get the overall track really loud, but it'll cut off any peaks.
Yeah.
So that leads me to the master track. So for the master track, I set up just another standard channel EQ. And
Okay.
that's maybe a little bit redundant, but it's just a habit I got into, cutting out a little bit at 5K and a little bit at 2K, and then just bass below 40 hertz, 40, 43, whatever, in there somewhere. And then I have a multi-band compressor that boosts a little bit of bass and a little bit of highs. And this is actually just a stock multi-band compressor setting from Logic for, it's called Final Pop compressor. It's actually for pop songs, but I find it adds a nice little sheen. It adds a nice little touch, and they have some funky threshold and ratio settings for the different bands. And I'm going to be studying multi-band compressors in more in depth, because I've been using, for the last couple of years, I've been using them to either boost or cut frequency ranges.
Okay.
It's like you can, in Logic, you can actually reduce the volume of the bass of a track just by pulling down on the bar right here. So I could boost the highs and cut the lows if I wanted to, and kind of tweak it like that. But I know these things, there's a lot more you can do with this, and I've got to learn what's the optimal way to compress all the different bands, because all the different frequencies behave differently under compression, so that's more fun. But anyways, multi-band compressor, and then an overall compressor that catches the extreme peaks, just anything above 2K, gives an overall boost of a couple decibels. In this case, it's 4, and then it has a limiter which will work as a, it's kind of, they call it a brick wall. It's like nothing goes above -1. So it kind of stops.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't talk much about limiters. So do you normally adjust that, or you kind of just leave that at the -1?
Yeah, I leave it at -0.1 actually, which is just below 0.
Okay.
So it's like nothing ever actually hits 0. It's going to cut off that audio. So that's
Okay.
and yeah. So this is kind of my default, and the ratio here is set 4:1.
So this is you're looking at, this is going to be more of a hard compressor.
This is very much so, yes. So this is just for this because it's on the master track. So anything that goes in here is not going to get above -2. It's going to clip that out before it hits the limiter.
Yes.
And it's also it's mainly there to provide an overall boost to everything that comes in. What I found though is that this means I have to adjust the other tracks accordingly, so I'm not getting too much gain.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times I'll actually go through and use the volume knob and just remove a couple decibels, just because you got to watch like what happens here and then what happens here. So if you play it back, you can see the difference. This one's a little bit lower than this. So even if this one, I'll just boost this for a minute. Even if this one is in the -3, -6, because I have a compressor on the master track that is adding 4 decibels of gain, it would be too much after it got to that compressor. So I have to.
That makes sense. So Aaron, when you do a compressor on the master track, are you generally doing a hard compressor almost always on the master track?
Yeah, because I try not to do too much to the master track, because it affects the overall sound instead of just the individual track.
Okay.
So like, and I've made this mistake in the past where I've done some EQing on the master track, and then I was thinking about it, and I was just like, man, why did I do that? Because like some of the tracks need more bass cut out of them, but if I cut the bass out of the master track, then some of the tracks are going to sound really bassy or just appropriately bassy, but some of the tracks are going to sound like they don't have enough bass. So it's better to make all the adjustments you need to on the individual track. Add the effects to each track and EQ it and compress it in the way that the track needs, and then just use the master track for, in this case, boosting a little bit of the highs and the lows, and then just adding some overall compression.
Aaron, let me get your advice on this. Generally,
Sure.
our workflow would be we record, and I would, which now I'm here, whatever. I'm just going to tell you. What we would do is I would just record the audio, send the raw, export the raw audio, and then I would Dropbox that to Scott. And then Scott will, because we record on Tuesday, the show comes out on Thursday. So he would be Tuesday evening, he cuts it down and kind of finds the story, cuts out a bunch of the BS. Then he would hand it over to me, and then on Wednesday night, I would work on it and do EQ, adding music and things like that. So talk to me, how does that feel to you when I say that?
I think it's a good idea.
Do you think it's okay that I do all of the EQ after all of the chopping is done?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because what'll happen is that you like, if he gets all the chopping done, if he gets the files the way you need them, then all you have to do is drop them in place, get them lined up the right way, like you said, and just kind of, since you'll have a template it'll have all the music and all the extra stuff that you need. Then you can just arrange everything and then listen back and make all the adjustments. But you'll have to make sure not to. Well, I didn't think you were doing any effects before you sent it to him, and he's probably not doing any effects when he sends it back.
Correct.
So, and are you guys sharing uncompressed audio files when you do that?
I've been sending it to him a MP3 at 256.
Okay, that's not terrible, obviously, and I'm sure you know this, but the higher quality you start off with, the higher quality your final MP3 will be. So.
Okay.
Because I get MP4s from people all the time. They're just like, hey, just cut this up, and I'm like, okay. Like it would sound better if you sent me a WAV file, but I understand that sometimes you can't send a gigabyte over Dropbox.
Right. Yeah, that's
take some time.
Yeah. Right. So okay, in the workflow like I had just described, if you were in the role of Scott, for instance, would I just give you or him the audition file, or would I give him, hey, here's a WAV, let's say, go ahead and chop this, and then after he chopped it, what would he give me back?
I would say, or Scott, you're still here, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you use Audition too?
No. Whenever I'm cutting, I'm using Premiere, and then Sim throws it in Audition and gets the EQ and everything.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if you guys are using Premiere, you can just save the project and share it back and forth, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So that's super easy. Me and Sean do that actually. He records into a Logic project. He'll save it. He maybe will cut off some of the extra stuff from the beginning and the end if he thinks necessary. But he'll send me a project. I'll actually just make a copy of it, do all my work to it, which is just cutting out background noise and then any mistakes and stuff. And then I save the project and put it back into Dropbox. So okay. I think that workflow actually works pretty well.
Great.
So I'm just thinking out loud. So yeah. I'll give him, hey Scott, here's all the audio files. Let's say, if we could go uncompressed all, that'd be better. Here's WAV. He'll put them into Premiere. Then I'll go in, let's say, into Premiere and listen one more time to make sure I have the story is how I want it. Then, Aaron, if I'm understanding, then once the story is totally how I want it, I still haven't worried about any effects, then I would export and then I would come in and lay effects.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And I would spend some time getting comfortable with editing audio inside of Audition.
Yes.
Just because I feel like you could save a step by, as soon as he's done cutting up, doing the first pass, just dropping everything into the Audition template. And then as you're listening back, you're making the adjustments, you're doing the effects. Because you can kind of, it's not multitasking, but you can switch back and forth between the two. So like if you're listening back, you're listening to the story, but you're also listening to the audio quality, the EQ and the compression and all that kind of stuff, the volumes and all that. And then if you notice like there was a section, like a sentence or two that you want to cut out, well then you just go and you cut that out, line everything up how it should be, and then start playing again. And then you can go, and as someone's talking, maybe you've heard the part already, so you know what they're going to say, so you can focus on just doing EQ or just doing compression.
So, I mean, really, Scott and I should really just both use Audition.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If Scott's going to be editing for content first,
Yes.
I think he's fine with Premiere.
Okay.
So after he gets, because ideally, like you'll have your intro music set up, you'll have the commercial and you'll have all the music and the commercial in place, and you can just drop in like say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks. It gets more fun the more tracks you have, but
Yeah.
you'll just drop all those tracks in, put them in the right place, and then just hit play and listen back and start doing EQing, start mixing.
Okay.
And then as you're listening back through the track, you're doing mixing, you're making adjustments, maybe cutting a few things out.
Okay.
But for the most part, your job would be just doing the mixing.
Yes. That's basically what it is. Scott's doing the chopping. I'll do a listen through for let's say a final chop.
Sure.
And then do EQing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And so I would spend a little bit of time and get comfortable with editing, like just learn how to cut a section out of each track or all the tracks, and then assign a keyboard shortcut to that one command that selects everything in front of it so you can move it.
Okay, Aaron, along those lines, so I've got a shortcut to select everything to the end or in the front of a section of a, what do you call that?
A clip, I believe, most of the time.
Clip.
That's what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's see. Oh, that's crazy. Let's go ahead.
Well, so I'm going to figure those shortcuts out and become proficient.
Yeah.
Are there any other shortcuts that you think off the top of your head? Oh man, this is a $1 million shortcut.
Yeah, I would say I use Select All a lot, which is Command A.
Okay.
And so I think like if you assign, so that what you want to do is go into wherever you can set keyboard shortcuts to,
Yes, sir.
and assign a keyboard shortcut to select clips to start of session and then clips to end of session.
Okay.
And so that way you can very quickly grab everything behind where you're working or in front of where you're working, and move it around.
That's priceless.
Yeah, that's the best one. Let's see. You could also set some. It looks like there's already a keyboard shortcut for clips to end of selected track.
Okay.
So that could be good too if you do a bunch of editing work and then you have to go cut out one little tiny section. You'll want to use that one to kind of grab everything on that track. And you might actually be able to do that by, well, where did the mixer go? Oh, I'm so unfamiliar.
Yeah, and I know where the mixer is in Premiere because I can.
Right. So, multi-track. Here we go. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not proficient with it, but I think Audition is going to be the complement, the similar to Logic. I think that's Adobe's answer to Logic.
Yeah. So it looks like in here, I can just drag stuff and move it around and.
Oh, that was something else you said was an automatic crossfade.
Yeah. See, oh look, it does that automatically. Sweet. So you don't even have to worry about that. So that's cool. So, whoa. All right. So, like, say I'm working with these two files, and it's like, okay, I just cut a section out of the middle here.
Yeah.
I can click and drag and select that, hit my little keyboard shortcut, whatever it is, to select all the tracks, so I know I got everything in front of it. And then I zoom in a little bit, and then I say, okay, I'm gonna just drag it over the silence right like that. So now it's got a nice little crossfade automatically. So that's really cool. So you won't hear any transition, especially if you time it right, you know. Silence on top of silence, and with a crossfade on it means that the words will flow smoothly.
Okay.
Right.
So Aaron, if you're playing the role of Simeon and you get more or less an hour cut down piece, and my job would be to do a final run through, make sure there's nothing else that needs to be trimmed out, any more fat, and also layer in some music. How long do you think that person should be spending on that task?
For what you would be doing, so you'd be, if you start at the beginning and if the show's about an hour long from start to end.
Yes, sir.
Then I think you could be looking at spending an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours on it, and that's if maybe less. Like if you don't have to do a lot of cutting and you can really just focus on listening and making small adjustments to the plugins. Then you could probably get it done without stopping, but every time you stop it takes 15, 20, 30 seconds. So
Sure.
I've found that for most shows, if they don't have intense editing, and that would be stuff like trimming out all the background noise, or if someone's coughing all the time or making mistakes.
We're not getting into any of that.
Yeah. So if it's just mostly listening, you probably spend maybe like 25% longer than the show actually is, between 25 and 50% longer than the show actually is.
And what's your general rule as far as chopping?
For me, it's like I'm listening to the track and it's anything that shouldn't be there. Kind of. So if somebody has a super long pause or if they cough.
Yeah.
And they're like, so if someone's talking and they say and then they keep going, and I'm not a great speaker myself, I can do it, but I don't know how good I sound on a podcast. But as long as the conversation is moving, I don't worry too much about it. But
Okay.
like if someone stops and pauses and there's 3 or 4 seconds of dead air, I'll cut that out, unless it's for dramatic effect,
Okay. Yeah, great. Scott, do you have any questions that we didn't answer?
No, he's covered pretty much everything, or at least that I had on my list that I wanted him to, at least go over and mention.
So just to kind of run through this scenario one more time, I will record the tracks, upload them to Scott. Scott's going to edit within Premiere.
Right.
I will, and then he'll hand me the Premiere file. So then I'll be looking at a Premiere file, and then I will export each one of those tracks down, and then import each one of those tracks into Audition, and then from there I will listen / do the EQ and adjustments.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay.
And I took a couple. I wrote most of this stuff down, and I took some screenshots of compressor. Let's see. I took a screenshot of compressor, one with one of the EQ.
Oh, great.
This is how you save a project as a template.
Okay.
So that's, you go in Audition, you go to export, and then you session as template, and that'll allow you to reuse a template. So in this case, you're going to create a bunch of tracks. You're going to drop in all the plugins you need for each track and save that. And then I know you can also save the effects rack. So like I will put, in this case, I'll put in EQ, graphic equalizer, notch filter, we'll do parametric equalizer. So I'll do a parametric EQ. I will do a compressor, single band. If I was going to use a multi-band, I would put the multi-band first, just because it kind of adjusts the sound a little bit more. Let's see. Yes, I can move those around. And then a noise gate. Have you guys worked with noise gates much?
No.
Cool. A noise gate, let me go find my screenshot. No, don't have a screenshot, but I do have this thing. So a noise gate, okay. This basically says anytime the audio falls below -20, reduce it to -54 or whatever you set reduction to.
Okay.
So, and then you have an attack time, how long it takes to turn on, and then how long it takes to get to that -60, which in this case would be 1,000 milliseconds. So what this means is that, like, say you've got somebody talking, but then they stop talking and they back, someone else starts talking. Sometimes you'll hear the background room noise.
Yes.
And it's very quiet, but it's still there. This is where a noise gate comes in handy, because anytime the audio drops below a certain point that you set, I usually set it between -18 and -35. Somewhere in there, there's a spot where the background noise will be, but if you have this set, anytime it goes below -21, you can reduce it much further down. So it'll basically it'll fade out into silence, more or less.
Okay.
So that's a really cool plugin to use as well. So in this situation, and I wish there was a way to do this, and Chrome or Google Hangout may actually do this by default. Like, can you guys, when I stop talking, can you guys hear the fan in the room?
No.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So Google has some kind of noise gate. So whenever the audio threshold goes below -21, it cuts it down further. So that's good for noisy rooms where people record. A lot of your guests will do that.
Okay. And you always do a noise gate. That's one of your standards.
Yeah, that is a standard, and I wrote out the workflow here. I've got, show me folding text. I've got, usually it's EQ, compressor, noise gate. That's and sometimes I'll add more than one of each of those. So sometimes it'll be EQ compressor, noise gate, and that's it depends on how badly messed up an audio track is.
Okay.
So, but for the most part, EQ compressor, noise gate, or sometimes EQ multiband compressor, noise gate.
Okay.
So, and that's another one of those. Noise gate is another one of those things that you can watch like a 5-minute tutorial video and get the basics of. So, and I wrote down some resources for you guys to check out about this stuff. There's a few places I found that do really well. Oh, I will say this. It's not for. I don't think they have one for Audition or Premiere, but you can sign up for a free trial from lynda.com, and they have these foundations of audio courses.
Okay.
that well, sucks that you don't have Pro Tools or Logic. Basically, they set it up to where you can open up these practice templates or these practice projects,
Okay.
and they have built-in video. So I'll open it up and it'll have a video and I'll have all these tracks in it, do this thing, do this thing to that track and all this kind of stuff. Really, really cool stuff, and it's free, but I don't think they have an Audition version, just Logic and Pro Tools.
Okay, I'll look into that.
But yeah, you can get a 7-day free trial from Lynda and lynda.com. And so if you got a weekend where you can spend 3 or 4 hours watching these tutorials, you can pick up a bunch of good stuff about EQ and compression in a fairly short amount of time.
Okay. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. Is any final thoughts you think you want to send to our brains?
I hope I was helpful. I hope you guys got some good stuff out of this. I know it's a lot to take in, but the more, I will say, the biggest thing is just I know you guys don't have a lot of extra time, but getting in there and kind of just playing around with all the different settings and listening to how it affects the audio,
yeah,
is kind of the best way. And then also I'll send you a few places so you can watch some videos and hear some like really good audio engineers talk about how they do this stuff for vocals and things like that. And also I wanted to ask you what kind of headphones are you
Dude,
mixing with?
yeah, Aaron, I've been using the iPhone earbuds.
Woo!
Dude, my inner ear, or my outer inner ear, as my wife told me, because she's becoming a surgical technologist. But dude, it's just pain, and because my day job is making videos
Right.
for I'm making commercials, and I'm doing this stuff. So I'm mixing almost all the time, and I want to get the earphones that you're talking about. They were $100, I think.
Yeah, 90, $100. Sony MDR 7506s. And I can send you a link to that. No, why'd you go away? What's happening?
Running.
Here we go. Yeah, because and this is another reason to get those headphones. Besides the fact that they're very comfortable and they make everything sound good.
Yeah.
The important reason is that actually the earbuds that you're using right now kind of are pre-mixed. Like most consumer headphones have like they're altered. They kind of have a pre-EQ built in, so they're cutting out a little bit of the mids, they're boosting some of the highs.
Mhm.
So you're not actually hearing what the raw audio sounds like. You're hearing a mixed version of it.
Okay.
And so whenever you're trying to make adjustments based on what you're hearing, somebody else may end up with a different experience because you're not getting an accurate representation of what the audio actually sounds like.
Yep. I follow you. Okay.
Yeah. So and even the MDR 7506, while the response, the term is the frequency response is flat, which means it doesn't alter the sound very much at all. Even it has just a little bit more bass response than totally flat. But there might actually be a scientific reason for that. I'm just now getting into the super nerdy audio science type stuff, but
Okay.
it's the 7506s are well known for not adjusting the audio in any way.
Okay.
So, which actually makes most music sound better, because if you're listening to professionally mixed music, the audio engineers that mixed and mastered the music really know what they were doing, and so you don't need to adjust the sound. You just want to hear it how they heard it. But yeah, I would strongly suggest you get that, because otherwise you may hear more of something and it's not actually there in the audio. It's just your headphones are adding that frequency.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
First investment, man, and I would say whenever you guys can afford it, I would if you like podcasting and you really want to get good sound quality, I would try to step up to something like a Heil PR40 or a Shure SM7B.
Okay.
A dynamic mic, I think, will work better for what you're doing. Although I don't know. I had a condenser mic for the longest time, and I wasn't really ever happy with the outcome that I got out of it. I felt like they're a little bit bright.
Yes.
And they capture a lot of room sound.
So
But
the one you're on right now is a dynamic mic?
yeah.
Ah.
So
I
you have
thought
to
you basically had to do a compressor mic, or compressor?
a condenser, yeah.
Yes, right, a condenser mic.
Yeah. Well, those are
They're difficult.
yes.
They're, they are. They're fickle.
Yeah. So I had a USB condenser mic. It was a nice Shure mic. It was like a $200 mic. That's what I used for the Sean West podcast. But if I go back and listen to it now, I'd be like, man, I really wish I would have invested, $300 or $400 and gotten myself a good dynamic mic like the one I have now. But even like an SM58,
yes,
I think would sound great for you guys.
Really?
So, and I will say this: whenever you we talked a while back, and I'd listened to your show, and I actually thought you guys sounded really good.
Okay.
But I am partial to the nicer mics, and I've been going on like not rants lately, but I'm like, everyone should buy expensive microphones.
Right.
Just because like if you care about the show you're doing and you care about like doing a good job every week, I feel like it's I mean, well, I realize like people have budgets, right? Like not everybody has an extra $400 lying around, but I think it contributes so much to the overall success of your podcast, because if you have a rough time and somebody switches off, like bad audio kind of turns people off. They don't want to hear it.
Absolutely.
And I hate to see any show that does really good, interesting stuff run out of steam because they didn't want to drop more money for a better mic. You know what I mean.
Absolutely.
So, but I hate offending people too, so I don't want to do that.
No, no, that audio is what. Yeah, that's why we're here. Yes.
Yeah.
So even a 58, those are $100.
Oh yeah, well you can get them used on. Check out Guitar Center's used section on their website.
Yeah.
You can get them for like $50-$60.
Wow. Okay.
So.
And that
Go ahead.
Would take away a lot of the
high end and the room noise, I think. The excessive high end.
Okay. Well, we'll think about that. All right. Well, Aaron, that's all I've got.
Cool. I'm losing my voice.
Hey, I told you, man, we're gonna whip on you. Go.
Hey, it's cool. And thank you guys so much. And I'll shoot you over an invoice, but and also I have some stuff that I wrote down, probably 500-600 words and a bunch of links, and I'll send that, and you guys can share that. And feel free to ask more questions. And as I'm looking through and I'm finding stuff, we need to connect about the phone thing. And I won't charge you for that one because I want to write a blog post about it. So we'll figure out your phone setup whenever I get back from tour.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. We'll give you all kinds of props on it. So thank you.
Cool. Hey, no problem. Yeah, and then like if you just have one-off questions, like something I can answer in a quick email, man, just shoot it over or Skype me or something.
Okay. Yeah,
Great.
I really appreciate all your help with this, your guidance.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I hope it really helps. I like what you guys are doing, and then since I do this all the time, I understand the frustration of trying to figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah. Hey, have we talked about audio or music in podcasts?
We haven't. Well, hey, let me stop the timer and we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
Off the clock. Okay, cool. Right at an hour and a half. Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, that's what we're shooting at.
Nailed it. Okay. No. What do you think about music in podcasts?
I mean, you've heard. Sure, maybe you haven't. But do you ever listen to Adventures in Design?
I have not, but that sounds like a show I would like.
Yeah, I mean it's great. They talk about design, and then they just have a party and go crazy. So, but he is. They play a lot of music on there, and it's popular music, radio music, and then they use Libsyn, which you and I had talked about.
Yeah.
Or Libsyn.
Libsyn. There you go. Yeah.
To host and push over to iTunes. Great, no problem. But now I was talking to Libsyn about doing the same, and I mean he hasn't heard any of our stuff, and I'm sure this is just his disclaimer he has to tell everybody. But then he says, hey, make sure your music is podcast safe and that it's not radio music, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But
I think you can use like 15 or 30 seconds of a song without if it's copyrighted, without getting in trouble. But yeah, I mean, are you guys using commercial music for your intro?
No.
Because I guess what he's saying is like you can't go and grab a Foo Fighters song and use it for your intro.
Okay.
At least not probably more than like 15 seconds of it.
Okay.
But so I think that's what he means, or do you think he was talking about like curse words?
No, my impression was if if you don't own the song, you
Yeah,
can't put it on Libsyn.
yeah. Because what'll happen is if it's a copyrighted song that you don't have the rights to use, they have to take it down, or else like they'll
Yeah,
be they'll be held responsible for
but in your
copyright
experience
stuff.
with podcast, I mean, are you or any of the people that you work with using it and putting it up through Libsyn?
Yeah, a lot of the people I work with use Libsyn, and I think it's fine.
And they're using radio music.
Oh, well, no, what actually, and I'll send you this link too. There's a website called Audio Jungle,
Yep. Okay. Okay.
and this is where you can buy royalty-free music, which means you're allowed to use it on whatever you want. And it's like 15 or 20 bucks, and they got some pretty good stuff in there.
Okay.
You'll probably have to dig a little bit to find the kind of music you're looking for.
Okay.
But they got rock, they got metal, they got hip hop, they got all these different kind of like. Obviously, it's not going to sound like top 40 really highly produced music, but it works for commercials or podcasts or like corporate videos and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I will include the link, but that's Audio Jungle.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I think that's what he means.
Well, that's all I got, brother.
Cool, man. Music for podcasts. So, Scott, did you have any good questions? You were awfully quiet the whole time.
Yeah, I'm just pretty much sitting in, soaking it all up. I've been typing up a ton of notes. I'm just going to go back through and look. As Sim mentioned, he's kind of more of the EQ and the final audio on it. So this was really more beneficial for him, but I definitely picked up a ton of stuff from it.
Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, you got a recording of that, right?
Oh, definitely, yes.
So I apologize in advance for any awkward rambling that I made.
Oh, no, not at all. It was very helpful, really.
Yeah,
Cool.
It was great. Good job, Aaron.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time for us. Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Well, then I guess I'll catch you guys later. Shoot me a
Yep.
Skype and I'll send you that email.
Yeah, send it over to me and I'll get you paid.
All right, man. Thank you. Excited. I'll need that money for gas for the tour.
Yeah, amen. You do. Hard-working man.
Oh, I try.
Yeah.